right, welcome everybody to part 3 of mixing with Slate Digital plugins, where we're taking a mix and using nothing but Slate Digital plugins, with a few exceptions. And then at the end, we're going to do a mix of the same song with nothing but stock plugins and Waves plugins. And at the very, very end, we will compare the 3 mixes. So far we've done mix bus and drums, and today we're going to be looking at bass guitar. So I'm going to go ahead and add my tape emulation and console emulation, and then come back to the bass bus and start my processing there. So let's go ahead and get started, and then we'll talk about the changes I do afterwards.
Alone, the peace of mind that I've been searching for, and all I seem to hear is the sound of your laughter. And if you believe that I don't think about you, you should know it's hard to be so far without you. And when you hold my hand, it doesn't matter how far I may be. No, I'm home. I was there like the stars. Always lives in your heart. So let's enjoy our time. I'ma lean on you, you lean on me. So good when we're together. Hey, now
Okay, so to me, this was the quickest and easiest setup of the bass guitar. It just was so quick to get that sound that I wanted, and to me, this is just it's the fattest and punchiest out of the three. Um, so far out of all these videos, the Slate Digital is just blowing my mind, and that's just to be expected because these are my favorite plugins after all. So let's just start with what I started with. So as usual, I'm using tape saturation, but I'm using low bias to get more of that tape sound on the low end, because I really want to control that low end and don't want it to get muddy. And this kind of helps with that in a way. Okay, and then using the Neve console for some of that low end bump, and it just shapes the low end in a nice way that makes it fat but not muddy. Okay, then I came over here, and on the bus, I'm using the RC tube emulation to get some of that fat, rich, warm tube sound. I had to dial the input and output. I had to take it back quite a bit because this was getting hit really hard. And when you hit this hard, this thing will go into some crazy distortion. And that's not really what I wanted. I wanted more of the subtle saturation from it. Okay, then I high passed around 40 hertz and cut out some of the low mids at 400, kind of just clean things up a bit. Then I'm using a compressor here on circuit 2, which is kind of like an opto compressor. I usually use an LA2A, but there is no LA2A in the virtual mix rack, so this is kind of similar to that sound. So I used a ratio of 3-to-1, slow attack, pretty fast release actually. And I'm just aiming for 2 to 3 dB of compression there, and then making up the gain. That's why if you notice, like even when I trimmed the output back, it still sounded louder even when the peaks were hitting around the same. It's because the RMS level has now been raised. The low energy stuff, low level, low volume stuff comes up, and then the higher volume stuff gets turned down. So that's pretty much the concept of a compressor, right? And then I just added some of this this punchy from the custom series lift, just a little bit, just to get some of that punchiness out of the bass. And then I used a trimmer to just dial it back. I didn't level match it because it's actually quite a bit louder than before, but I did take it down to like the original level just so you can hear the differences that are made when I bypass it. But to me, it's sitting better in the mix at the level that it's at now. So sometimes what I do is I'll mix things a little bit quiet, so that way when I add these plugins, I don't have to do so much like gain staging to make it exactly the same level, because I almost never get it at the same exact level. So I kind of get it to where I know that when I add processing, when the volume is raised, it'll be in the right spot it needs to be, if that makes sense. Right, when I say right spot, I mean volume. Okay, so let's go to the bass DI. So what I did was I, once again, high passed around 30 hertz, cut out some of those low mids, and then to get rid of some of that string sound, I rolled off some 12K. And in the other mixes, I was adding some upper mids, some high mids, but to me, I didn't really need it with these. Something about the plug-in chain made it cut through still. So I can experiment later on adding some of this 4K, but right now I don't think it needs it. And then once again, I use the same compression settings pretty much, just a faster release and a faster attack, just to make that bass DI sit behind, because I want that bass amp to be in front of this and on top. So just to make it match that bass amp sound a little bit better, I added some of the big from the custom series lift, and that really just adds some nice weight without being muddy. And then even more simple than the DI is I high passed at 30 and then cut some 400 just to get rid of that muddiness. A slower attack and a slower release, but same circuit 2 and 3-to-1 ratio. Just barely getting any compression, 2 to 3 dB. On the really heavy hits, it sometimes will jump up to 5 dB, but that's not all the time. And then I came with the Revival and added some thickness and shimmer just to get some harmonic saturation on this bass amp, because it's really, really a sweet bass amp. And something I need to also mention is that this transformer is engaged on all these FG401 compressors just to get that coloration, because it's really a really sweet sounding compressor. I love this virtual mix rack and all the units that are in there. So as you can see, I dialed that in pretty quick. One thing I should also mention is that I'll probably need to go in, and since volume has been added, just adjust my mix bus compression, as well as how hard I'm hitting the tape and console. But those are quick little easy fixes, and it'll rebalance the mix a little bit better. But as you can see, just these few changes, the mix is really starting to image better. It's starting to sound fatter, more punchy, and more appropriate to the type of sound that the song is implying. So I hope you learned something new from this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, please give it a like. If you didn't, you can give it a dislike. That's okay. You're entitled to your opinion, as I always say. If you really liked it, please subscribe. I would greatly appreciate that. Thank you so much for everybody who's been subscribing. Once again, I hope to see you in the next video. Thank you so very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video, which will be guitars. Have a wonderful day.